All right. Welcome, everybody. The date is February 15th, 2022. It's the day after Valentine's Day. Happy Tuesday, everybody. And this is the Cloud Custodian community meeting. As always, we do record these meetings and put them on YouTube, so please be cognizant of that. And we are under the code of conduct is in effect from the CNCF. So welcome, everybody. Let's get started. I've got the agenda here. I am pasting the URL if you want to follow along here in chat. And as always, we do have an open agenda. So if you'd like to add something, just tack it on there to the bottom. And while the meeting goes on, I'll give people options to add more stuff. So first things first, we're going to go over the Cloud Custodian workshops. We do not have any for this month for February. We're going to have 2 in March. That's March 8th and March 9th. And if you click through on the notes here, I've got the URLs to both of them there. If you want to sign up, and they have the descriptions there. So the first one's the introduction to Cloud Custodian, more of a high-level conceptual workshop, and the second one is a 101, and Liz is raising her hand probably to add more detail.
Yeah, there's the workshop and the 101 and a 102. And the 102 is on the 16th. It's also, if you go on the live storm, I believe that's what that platform is called. It should be on there. And in that webinar, we will be covering C7N mailer and C7N org. So if you are curious about what happens next after you've figured out, you're like, I know what a policy is and I've run them and I've got that working. Now what? This class is for you.
This is our first 201, right? I think.
A 102 to a 102. I don't know what we're.
Sorry.
I haven't been in college or university for a while. I don't know how the numbers work. Just basically, but it's the subject matter that matters the most, I think. And so, so we'll be covering C7N mailer and how that works with the notify action and C7N org, and how you use that to run Cloud Custodian across multiple accounts. So we'll be doing that. And there's more info.
Yes. The link for the description.
Yeah, so on the live storm page, you will find the info there.
Awesome. Thanks. So it's 3 workshops in March. As always, they're free of cost, but we do ask that you click through to register so we know how many people are coming and that sort of business. So, all right. Thanks for that. Anything else workshop related?
One question I have, do you guys have plan or ideas on workshop for people who actually want to contribute? For example, me right now, I'm adding in PRs, but as Kapil pointed out, you should do things this way. What about caching, right? You forgot to do caching. So those kind of things will be quite helpful for people like me. I don't know what the demand for that is like, but yeah, definitely on my team from Intuit, there are going to be other people beside me who will be contributing, and we want to do it in a way that will keep the code in high quality as you guys would like it to be.
So I just want to make sure I understand your question. So what I am understanding is you are asking about classes that are more like workshop, where it's like, this is my use case, how would I do this, kind of?
No, I'll say beyond that, it's more about how the code is structured, best practices or just
best practices.
Yeah, I think this is more
the code itself, and not just the policy, but the code itself.
Right. How to contribute, so to speak.
Oh, I
see.
I
think it's a great question. So I am tentatively planning, and sorry to hijack on an agenda, George, but I'm tentatively planning for us to try to do a contributor sprint at PyCon. So right after PyCon, there's typically a few days set aside for any project that is interested to get a room and effectively have people come. It's free. There is no, you don't have to attend PyCon. You don't have to do anything as far as paying to attend. You do have to figure out your transport. PyCon is in Salt Lake City in April. So looks like it's the first 2 days in May. I think it's the sprints this year are only like 2 or 3 days. And I think that sort of information flow with regards to developer workflows and contributing is really best done in person. I definitely think there's value in trying to like encapsulate or talk through some of the philosophy of Custodian, try to get recorded or documented. But if there is, we have historically done these. We've done a few of these in the past. Obviously, the last few years, not been the case due to circumstances outside of our control. But looking to do that again starting this year. At least for PyCon, I'm not really willing to commit to other dates, just based on external factors per se.
Yeah, and I'd like to get us to a point where we're doing workshops like that as regularly as we are doing user-focused workshops. Like everything from setting up the CLA thing to, you know, what your first PR and all of that kind of stuff. We're just not there yet.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think that's a wonderful point, Darren. And yeah, that is something I'd like to develop further, because you're not the first person to ask about this. So yeah, yeah, we'll keep that. That's something we'll be working on.
All right. And we do have some unfinished business from last time. So I put Darren's PR up top there, Kapil, if we want to go over 7029 here real quick.
Yeah, I think last time there were 2 PR. One, thank you, Bill, you have already merged it. This one, again, I was just asking for further clarification.
Yeah, sorry, I've been on a PR storm today. I did not go back to that one yet. I did see that you had followed up a day or two ago.
So this is to add a manage config rule. And
no, it's actually one policy. It would be, the notion is like having what do we want as a filter for enabling the action. In this context, the action is not on against a resource that exists, so it's a creation resource. Therefore, it's against the account as a virtual resource, effectively. And then, but from a detection perspective, we do want to have the detection against something. We already have config rules as a resource type. The account has a special case for this, which is a missing filter, which is basically fires when something doesn't exist. Basically, it's like an embedded policy within a policy. You haven't seen the missing filter, so it's like how do I the missing filter on the account's useful for a lot of different cases. It's effectively, how do I assert the existence of something that doesn't exist? Generally, when you think about custodian policies, you're basically finding all the resources and then you're filtering the things that's something that's interesting. Well, when something that's interesting doesn't exist, how do you find that? And that's what the missing filter is for. And so in that context, the missing filter, in this case, we would need an additional, there are some additional attributes you're pulling in, which from a different API call that we would need to expose as an additional, like maybe it was a remediation status, I think, remediation configuration. So on a config role, I think we'd want to have a filter for doing the pulling in some of that remediation information, and then you would be able to do the missing filter. So it would be one policy from an effect from, but it would be something that would actually, we would only fire the action in the context that the correct filter with the correct configuration and the correct remediation didn't already exist.
So I'm not familiar with the missing filter. Is that something part of the account resource?
It's part of the account resource
Yeah, I'm
because
trying to look it up, but I didn't see it documented. Is it a hidden thing? I did not see it.
that is a good question. It is a slightly different one. If you're on the command line, should be able to do Cloud Custodian schema or C7 schema. Sorry, the schema on the account filters.missing. I am trying to just double check that it's in our reference docs right now, and yes, it is.
Is there an anchor link? That you
It's
can,
not super well documented, and it probably could use a long form documentation. It is documented to the point of three sentences, but it doesn't have an example, let's say. So that's definitely something that could use an example per se. If you go to the AWS reference under accounts filters missing, you can find it there, but I don't think it's actually very helpful. So you're confused. You're surprised that its existence is not unfounded.
appeal for the notes I'm taking down. We need to document what is the specific.
I think we need a narrative doc example around the missing filter. It covers off on a set of key use cases for the assertion of something that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Without the documentation, I have no idea how it works right now. What you described earlier is kind of over the top of my head.
Sure. I will.
I think it might help.
I will post the example in Gitter.
Yeah.
Just to at least facilitate something, so it's not left as something hanging for the future. But I do think we need some docs, which I think George has captured here as well, for a future ongoing thing.
And I'll grab the example from when you post it in Gitter and make sure it gets into the notes.
I'll update the issue as well.
And are you suggesting extending the missing filter or adding in a new
the missing filter is
similar to it?
The missing filter is transparent. You don't need to do anything with missing filter. So the missing filter is effectively a way to nest a fully formed policy underneath it.
Okay.
So in that context, what we're really trying to do in this particular case is add a remediation filter to a config rule, so that you can assert the attributes of the remediation configuration for that.
Okay, I think I kind of got it now. But yeah, definitely seeing some sample will help. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. And if we have further questions, we'll revisit in 2 weeks. All right. Anything else on this one before we move on? Thanks, Darren.
I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Next one I got from Maddie was pointing out that Python disutils is being removed in 3.12. In Python 3.12, it's already deprecated. And I've got the link there. And we had a quick discussion between ourselves that I'd like to repeat here about where we stand with disutils for Python.
It's a little bit weirder than that. I just realized. Apparently, they've transparently started to make disutils go to setup tools. It was initially going to say, we'll just push this one down the road, but in further respect, and further realizing that there's something weird going on in it and how they're doing it, realizing that we should probably just I think we have two things that we depend on from them, from disutils. One was a version class that did version parsing, was version that we use in the value filter. The other one was a string to bool thing that we use for sort of parsing environment variables. Strong consideration on just do we vendor both of those and move on. Yeah, like when I last when it does the deprecation right now, it actually, like on Python 3.10, it actually pulls it from, it's already gone, so to speak, and it's pulling from something else. So there is some other consideration from that Linux Weekly News article with regards to some of the going too fast for the community perspective, some of the changes, but this one is already in progress. Thankfully, nothing in our ecosystem on any of the serverless platforms in the cloud has gotten to 3.10 yet. So it's not burning, but it's definitely something I think we want to be more proactive at, as far as looking at this year, as opposed to in 2 years when 3.12 comes out.
Could I file an issue?
Yeah, go for
All
it.
right. And I've been messing around with doc stuff and running into things, poetry and whatnot. And Liz asked, are we switching to poetry? What's the TLDR? Liz, do you want to add any color on this one, or where we just
No, don't have anything to add. Just wondering what the official stance on this is.
Poetry is awesome. It's the bee's knees. I dig it a lot. At the same time, as a project, we do not have an opinion with regards to what our users want to use. At the same time, poetry came in about a year ago, actually almost a year and a half ago, probably just because we have a lot of different dependents, a lot of different packages that we package up out of the Custodian code base. And poetry offered a clean way of doing that we could extend and use an API to facilitate that. We have maintained our standard pip requirements files at the same time. However, recently over the last 2 months, when we actually switch, like the real question is what's being tested in CI. And initially, poetry was just in one small part. It is now the entire pipeline actually runs off of poetry as well. And we actually need to reintroduce something that is actually validating our pip tux files, so to speak, to make sure that those things are good. And I think we also probably need to document the default developer setup, I think, for using poetry. At the same time, for users that are using, they're not using poetry, that's fine. We intend to continue supporting that use case ongoing. And we will announce that at such a time if we ever change it. It's just we're effectively just exporting out. Like the poetry is the source of truth, and we generate all of our packages and we freeze all of our things for release, and we generate requirements files all from the poetry as sort of the source of truth. So the extra burden there has not been significant. So the intent is to continue to maintain that. So no changes per se. If you're a user, if you're a developer, we should switch out the docs to recommend poetry as what we do. At the same time, we also need to introduce the pip requirements files into our CI to make sure that they don't have an issue, or if they do, that they will fail CI.
Cool.
All right. And I have an item to update the docs and whatnot and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
if there's anyone interested in helping me out with that, let me know.
Can we capture the item for SARA CI? Yes.
No, we did not. Which is not. It was. What part of CI needs to be updated specifically?
We just need to have the requirements in the non-poetry installation in CI to make sure it doesn't break.
That's silly. They need to be added back, right? Into CI to make sure it continues to work as users expect. That sound right? Okay. And
Liz, you were saying something?
George's on.
Oh,
this.
just
It's Liz.
I wanted to be part of that documentation process. Yes.
Got you.
There we go. And I know that George and I are working on that, and that we're kind of a little bit blocked still, right? On that, George?
Yeah, actually, there's 2 PRs, Kapil. I forgot to mention my own PRs in the thing. One of them is from AJ to update the requirements.txt. Is that the right file? And there was one from someone earlier.
I've got about 12 PRs merged earlier today, so
Okay. I will follow back on and then see if that one works. So, so for everybody else, I went and I tried to build the documentation and talks. If you follow the documentation, the talks workflow was busted. So I filed an issue on that, and hopefully you merge one of them. And if not, I'll follow up with you on that. Okay, moving on. We're due for a release. We haven't released since November 15th. So I asked Sonny if he was interested in doing a release, and we are going to try that this Thursday. I think, is that the day we settled on? 1 second. We're gonna hop on a Google Meet, and we're gonna have Kapil not do the release. He's just gonna observe, and we're gonna follow the instructions on how to do a release under Kapil's supervision. And then ideally, I've asked AJ to do the next subsequent release in the same kind of manner, seeing if we can get releases done by people who are not Kapil, so we can start to spread the wealth as far as the technical know-how and how the project works. I'm going to record all of these, and we're going to have them on the YouTube channel. And if there's actually anybody interested in doing a release, I would very much like to get us in a spot where non-Kapils and non-Stacklet employees can do releases at some point in the future, like good, healthy open source projects do. Does anybody have any comments on that, or anybody interested? It's cool if you're not. Everyone's like, I'm going to see how Sonny gets on, and then I'll make a decision. So, yeah. And if you're interested in doing that, please let me know.
Prerequisite would be being a committer or maintainer.
Oh yeah, we're not going to let random people just do releases. But if you're interested in starting that road and want to observe and watch along, that's probably something we can work towards. Anything else on this one? All right. Next one's yours, Kapil. This is another continuation. The AWS Cloud Control API. If you can give us the 15-second summary before you get into it, for those of us that aren't familiar with the history on this one.
In the beginning. So Cloud Control is effectively if you take the CloudFormation API surface and you said, well, I don't actually care about writing CloudFormation, but I actually do care about all those resources. Can you give me an API for all the things that are in CloudFormation to do CRUDL, create, read, update, delete list? Then that is what Cloud Control is. And it sounds cool. It sounds like a nice uniform abstraction, but it's a leaky one. So at the same time, it has a lot of resources in it. Both Terraform and Pulumi have new providers, not updating existing, that also target it. And after some, I think Pratish filed the request that I engaged with it on. There is now a Cloud Custodian cloud control provider. It is alpha. It is not. We are not replacing the existing AWS provider. It is an additional provider. It has completely different attributes, and therefore, it's not isomorphic to policies. You can't just change the resource name and expect anything to work. It does, however, offer some additional coverage as far as the number of resources it covers. It covers some things that Custodian Native does not do, and vice versa. But one interesting thing, and let me preface this by saying it is pure R&D, currently exploring, but definitely of interest, is based on the new CloudFormation hooks capability, is something that we are going to explore, or I am actively exploring, as far as seeing if we can bring in use this as with the new execution mode as effectively a form of preventative control via Cloud Custodian policy, which is really big and super interesting as a capability. But let's see if we should actually talk about it when there's actually code written and a PR up in that regard.
Any questions on this one? I know we had questions earlier in the process.
How would that work in terms of preventative control? Would it like hit the hooks in the cloud control APIs? Because from what I heard, AWS is providing a way to write rules for evaluation of infrastructure as code. Is it along the same lines?
Okay, this is going to require a full segue into shift left. So
I'll time box you. Don't worry.
okay, please do. So everyone, like generally speaking, we're all writing, some form of infrastructure as code, DevOps, and there are a number of tools out there for that. CloudFormation in AWS, Terraform, pretty much for everyone else. I know Google has deployment templates. Actually, Azure has been investing in some of their templates as well. But I think from a market share perspective, I think Terraform is probably fairly predominant. Now, for all these things, there's effectively a form of static analysis linters. These are effectively client-side tools that potentially some with SaaS that you effectively have to incorporate into your CI pipeline.
Got it. Okay.
And so AWS, I think, has CFN Guard as a component written in Rust as a rules engine that'll effectively read some stuff. You have to pull it into your CI pipeline and they'll go evaluate it. They also have CFN Lint. Literally for every IAC tool definition format, there are effectively a dozen tools that will try to go give you some language to use in your CI pipeline. In the context of this, and probably the closest, the nearest analogy is Azure Policy, which is effectively a full-time preventative in a limited DSL that is effectively evaluated against resources, but that's directly against the underlying resource creation APIs, the underlying resource service APIs. In CFN hooks, CloudFormation hooks are effectively an arbitrary Lambda function. They're very similar to a CloudFormation custom type as far as how they feel to write underneath the hood. And they effectively get evaluated and get to approve, deny a stack creation or stack change.
Got it. Yep.
And the context that the evaluation here is for the new provider where we already are using the same attribute in the cloud control provider, effectively we're using the same attributes that CloudFormation consumes. Therefore, we adhere to our general principle that execution modes are isomorphic to policy definition, that you will be able to take a policy and just put like a CFN hook as an execution mode and have it deploy as a
Lambda.
as well, not just as a Lambda, but as a CFN hook. Yes, as a Lambda, but the CFN CloudFormation custom types and CFN hooks are different than most Lambdas you probably have seen in the wild. They're a little bit more complicated. Like there's a documentation on what actually happens under the hood. They've provided SDKs because it is complex in terms of what does happen underneath the hood. But because you have to log into multiple different accounts, you're actually executing. You have credentials both into the target account as well as the service account. That's it.
Got it. Yeah, I
You only
think-
did that in 4 minutes. So
Yeah, that was pretty elaborate. Thanks.
anything else on this one? All right. And then in the report, I have all the PRs that have been closed and open and issues that have been closed and open over the past 2 weeks. If anyone wants to check those out, is there anything that is jumping out at folks that they want to discuss? Did you want to talk about Matthew's idea about S3 URL for policy locations?
Not per se. I mean, it's basically where we'll you can pass the CLI a policy at an S3 URI. Yeah.
That might be
But-
interesting to folks. And then AJ had one, but wasn't able to come to this meeting. I don't know if we have an opinion on 7089. I think this
There's some. AJ has a really awesome knack for doing really small PRs that like make me go, I don't know if this is safe. And so in this particular case, I think we'll probably change this a little bit, but in general, we need to do it. So it's just a question of doing it with compatibility, and the implementation on this PR will likely change.
got you. All right. So if you're interested in those, as always, I put all the activity over the past 2 weeks in the notes before we publish. And with that kind of handles our agenda. Does anybody else have any outstanding items or anything they'd like to bring up? Open mic, I guess. Going once. Going twice. All right, we'll give everybody 25 minutes back. Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone coming to attend. And we'll see everyone in 2 weeks and hope to see some of you at the workshops. Happy Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.